the waiting room. I'm super excited to see how many people are here. My name is Susie Seymour. I'm the Director of Classified Personnel. Many of you I've seen or talked to before, but many of you I have not. And again, I'm super excited to see the amount of interest for this new job that we have created and kind of a new direction that the district is going into. And so I'm going to let Gabriella Maffei kick off the meeting and let us know about the program.
Wonderful. You guys can all hear me? Great. Okay. It's great to see so many faces. I'm like, I know a lot of these people and names. So first of all, I'm Gabriella Maffei. Very nice to meet you all virtually. I'm sure I've seen you out and about at the schools, which are all back open, thank God. We're so happy about that. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about this program because Susie and I, and Jason, of course, Bivakwa, we should acknowledge Jason, our Assistant Superintendent of Personnel. We've been involved in this from the beginning. So actually, I was thinking, Susie, I could trace it back even further because my husband in 1995, when my daughter was born, who's now 26, or almost 26, was an instructional aide in Long Beach Unified. And so I've actually been saying it since that time. And I was 1996. I think I was an administrator by then, but I was classroom teacher going to administrator. So I have long thought, first of all of us feel that and know, as your teachers do as well, that paraeducators in the classroom are a key and critical component to student success. And whether you work as a bilingual instructional aide, as an IBI, as a special ed, in any of the roles that we have in this district, your impact on students is quite important. And it is valued by the district and it's valued by the schools that you serve at and the teachers that you work with. But one of the things, Susie Seymour and I can trace it back at least 15 years, because that's when I came onto cabinet as the director of 712 instruction, that we have long said that we have so much professional development for teachers and we do not have as much professional development for classified employees, and in particular for those who need it the most, which are working directly with students, right, on instructional strategies. So we have talked over the years and said we could have consultants come in and we could do this and we could do that. But then now we have this opportunity, and it is an ongoing opportunity. So it's not going to end when this one-time funding ends. Rick Nakano, who's not here now, but is our Assistant Sup of Business, would tell you, and I've already made him make the commitment that this is going to continue on as this POSA, paraeducator on special assignment, modeled after what I'm sure you've seen coming out to the schools, which is our teachers on special assignment, whose role is to support all of the teachers in the classroom. Your role would be to support all of the paraeducators in the classroom. We are in unprecedented times, as you know, and our students have experienced great learning loss during the time of the pandemic. And in addition to learning loss, great trauma in their homes, not just from a health perspective, but from a fiscal perspective in their families. I mentor students within the district. I have 30 kids at Santiago and 30 at Los Amigos that I've been with since 6th grade. And I talk to their parents and families. And we know how hard hit our kids have been. We've been fortunate that we've been able to continue working. We haven't experienced loss of pay. Many of our employees, most of our employees, were able to work from home for periods of time, but our families have not been so fortunate. And we know we have a lot of extended learning support that we need to provide for students, in addition to the important first instruction in the classroom. So this role of the paraeducator on special assignment is going to be focusing on that real coaching role. So the first thing you might say is, well, wait a minute, I haven't had all the training and everything. Don't worry, because when a TOSA leaves the classroom and becomes a TOSA, there's a lot of training about, you know, what are the different programs that are out there? What are the expectations? You might say, well, I'm in a primary MS. I'm not sure what they expect in high school. So that training would be provided, very intensive training to make you a specialist in that area so that you can serve as a coach to other paraeducators. You also would have play a critical role in helping to support at our schools the after-school interventions. We've sort of gotten away from the after-school interventions over the years. Not as many people have wanted to teach them, but now we're coming up to a time where kids are going to need more time, not less time. So the instructional day really isn't sufficient for kids who've suffered learning loss. They need hours after school with small group interventions, right? On literacy and mathematics. And that's not just the little guys in kindergarten and first grade. They need a lot too. You know, they haven't even had the time to do a lot of their phonemic awareness or hand-eye coordination, but also our older students who've experienced learning loss. And that's general education and special education. So your role, which would be really exciting, is to become that expert paraeducator that's going to be able to go out and co-plan, co-teach small group instruction, support interventions, both within the school day and after school, and be that resource. So part of that is going to be training and support for you to get you to that level that you feel comfortable being that coach alongside your peers, just like the teachers on special assignment do in the instruction office. And we actually have 76 of them. They keeps growing. Back, I had like 7 back in 2006 and I had 712, and now I think there's like 30 of them or so. There's a lot. Because what happens is, we used always to say, it's the secret sauce. Really, when people are in the classroom, whether it's a paraeducator or a teacher, having someone come in and help to support them and teach alongside them or do a small group intervention alongside them is the best professional development that you can provide to your peers. It's one thing to sit in a training and just hear blah, 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 but it's another thing to practice it, right? Hands-on. As well, you would be working with 2 teachers on special assignment who will be helping to coordinate it. And you will be hearing down the road about a new director of personnel who's going to be overseeing the whole program. So it's not like you're going to be like, oh, I'm off on my own. There's going to be a whole infrastructure to help to support you. It is a full-time position, which is great with benefits. And it is going to be possibly a stepping stone, because you may say, I'm working right now, I'm interested in this in the future, or this may be what you do for some period of time. We're looking for about 5 folks in this role. Rick has committed to at least the funding for 5. We might end up growing it, as we did with the TOSAs, which started in a very small number and has expanded. But I'm super excited. I'm looking at 66 participants. When you subtract district staff, I think we've got in excess about 55 at least folks that are interested in doing this. So we're really excited. This is kind of a little brainchild part of mine that I'm just so excited to bring to fruition, the training and support for paraeducators that has long been needed. And that's not to say that you guys haven't done a fabulous job, because you have, but we need to provide more support to all of your peers. So someone, first day, my husband, first day as a paraeducator in a 5th grade classroom, say, what do I do? Like, you know, there's no real manual. It can vary from teacher to teacher, and there's not necessarily even a lot of training that precedes that first day. And I know this is really going to help all your peers and all the new folks coming in. So super excited to hear more about what happens. I know it will go through the merit system, through all of that process, which I believe Eliana is going to describe a little more in detail.
Thank you, Gabriella. I had muted myself. We are going to go on and invite our Assistant Director, Eliana Seja, to discuss kind of the application screening process, what the minimum requirements are for the job, so that you're very successful in filling out your application. But while we're doing that, feel free to put any questions in the chat so that we can answer those after she speaks. So Eliana.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I just wanted to go through kind of the entrance requirements, because it's that's kind of the first step of the process, right, is applying, which it is open right now for applications, and it's open I think until the May 28th, so we still have a little over a week left to get your applications in. But the most important part, I think, of an application is the supplemental questions. So I wanted to really kind of describe that a little bit more. So you'll want to complete the application to its fullest extent that you can. I mean, there's parts on there that are optional, so feel free to skip any of those. But the supplemental questions are all required. And you should all be familiar with that, because when you applied for the first time, there probably were some questions at the very end of the application that we asked you to complete. Most of them are yes/no questions, so they're pretty straightforward. But then there are two questions that are kind of written as like a narrative response. So I wanted to just go through that. So the first one is about your education, the education requirements. So for this position, you do have to have either an AA degree, have completed 48 full semester units, or 72 quarter units. Okay, so that is the educational requirement. So if you apply and you don't meet that educational requirement, unfortunately, you will be screened out of the process. And so in that question, though, it's asking like, how do you meet the educational requirements? So you'll just list exactly what you have, you know, whatever your educational background is. And then in addition, in that question, we also ask if you've completed any coursework, either in child development or in education. We ask that you list that on there too, or a related field to that, because we're just kind of interested in what your background is. And that is more of a desirable qualification. It's not going to screen you out if you don't have that coursework. But I think we just see that as valuable, as another valuable tool, you know, in your toolbox if you have that. So make sure to list those courses if you do have them. And then the second narrative question that's on there is related to your experience requirement. So the experience requirement for this position is, I'll read it from the posting because that's the clearest way to make sure that I'm getting the message across. But it's going to be the equivalent of 2 years of part-time experience working as a paraeducator in an educational setting. Okay, so for all of you out here in the crowd, it is, you do need to be have worked in this role for at least 2 years. And we know that your jobs are part-time, so we're not asking for full-time equivalent experience because that's usually what we do for other recruitments, but we were very specific on this one that part-time is acceptable. So, and the way that we define paraeducator is really any type of instructional aid. Paraeducator is just a really broad term to describe someone that's working in a classroom setting alongside with students and supporting students with instruction. So you might have all kinds of different, you know, I'm sure in this crowd, we have all kinds of different paraeducators. So as part of that question, we ask for some specific key pieces of information, like what's your job title, basically specifically what, you know, type of paraeducator you are, what the grade level of students that you've worked with, and then the schools that you've been with. Although we require 2 years of experience, we're not saying that all of those 2 years have to have been with Garden Grove, because we know that some of you hold 2 jobs or maybe have worked at a different district prior to coming to Garden Grove. So I just wanted to make that clear too, is we're just looking at 2 years in totality of experience working as a paraeducator. All right, I think that's about it. I mean, I can't stress how important it is to complete those supplemental questions, because that really is the proof that you're qualified for this job. And here in our office, when we actually look at all the applications, when we're screening them, it's not a robot that's doing that. You know, we're actually reading through them all. So you really do have to make your case on there, and we have to clearly be able to tell that you do meet those two, education and the experience requirement.
Eliana, I had a question sent to me. A letter of recommendation, is that required? No?
We don't require a letter of recommendation. I would say you could attach it to your application, because what happens is if you get invited to a final interview, anything that you attach to your application will be provided to those who will be making the, you know, doing the final interviews and evaluating you there.
Okay, and we do have a question in the chat from an IBI who might work at multiple school sites and then through the different years. And so how detailed do they need to be on their application?
That's a really good question. I know some of you might have been paraeducators for a very long time, and there could be multiple schools that you've worked at. I think the intention of that question is to more identify, like, is it an educational setting? I mean, an elementary setting, an intermediate, or a high school? So if you can at least summarize it that way, I think that would be enough. You don't need to necessarily list out exactly which schools, because I know some of you do float around.
Are there other questions? If so, go ahead and put them in the chat, either about the job or about the application screening and testing process.
I had another question saying that someone tried to apply and it asked to either create an account or input user and password. So is that their district email and password?
No, so that would be through governmentjobs.com. That's the platform that we use. So if you've never applied for a job on governmentjobs.com, then you will need to create like an account with them. The bonus I'll have to say is many public agencies use government jobs. So in the future, if you're ever applying, it saves all your information on there. So do make sure to write that username and password down somewhere so that you don't forget, years later if you go to apply.
And one person asked if it's a 10 or 12-month position. And right now it's school session, though we anticipate needing to bring employees back in to either prepare for training over the summer, or specifically this summer, we want to work with the selected employees for training. So that would be extra duty, but the regular calendar for these employees would be school session, which is about 9.5 months. And then another person asked Eliana, if they already submitted their application, can they resubmit it or make modifications to it?
Yes, you can. And it falls into someone else's question. If you've already submitted and you want to go back and read it, you can. So you have to log back into governmentjobs.com and then you can see what you've submitted, and you should be able to read your supplemental questions. And if you want to revise it, you can still submit another application. What we do on our end is we just archive that first one. So we just pretend like it never happened, and we just go off of the most recent application that you submitted.
And then I believe if you haven't submitted, or if you've already submitted now and you have some questions that you would like answered before you submit the application by the deadline, you can call Eliana, you can call Adam Nieves, you can call Eric, Jessica, you can call our staff. And we're happy to answer any questions, because it's not meant to be a gotcha. We really want to get the best information from you, because we like to screen in people and not screen them out. Now, what we can't do though, is once the filing deadline has passed, I believe it's May 28th, you can't then make changes to your application after that. Is that correct, Eliana?
Correct, yeah. Until 5 o'clock on May 28th. That's the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So Tanya has a question. Would they be assigned to specific schools? And not sure about that yet. Typically what happens with the TOSAs is they may have a range of schools, but then they also have an area of specialty. So with 67 schools, you may have like, either by level or certain ranges, but we're not sure yet. So I think a lot of it is going to depend on who comes on board, and what your experiences are, and then with the new team, how you're going to divide and conquer. But most likely you would have some common places that you'd be going back to assign. It's not like you're going to all 67.
And Jennifer did ask if we know the dates for the summer training, and I don't believe we have those dates firmed up yet, unfortunately.
No, we don't. When we hire the folks, and then once we announce the new director of personnel, that person will work with those folks around. I think there's a good amount of flexibility. You're not required to attend, because we know this is the first summer in 2 years that anyone's ever been able to go anywhere. So you might want to actually go somewhere and have a little vacation, except for me, who's in quarantine because of my son, Gabriel. I have lived the quarantine lifestyle for 5.5 years, so it's not really changing for me. But you do not have to do summer extra duty. And they can always work it around whatever your availability. So don't make any changes to your summer plans once you're hired. Then those are, optional things. We want to get you in over the summer for some training, but there certainly will be flexibility. Another question that was asked just to me, Susie and Eliana, is if someone's been a paraprofessional for 1 year, but has other like Avid Tutor and other things, do they have to have been the paraprofessional for the 2 years in order to apply? Or is that something you would review? What would you advise that person?
I would suggest that person call us before they submit their application, and we can talk to them more thoroughly about what it entailed. I mean, a tutor's a great experience. It might be hard to capture, like quantify the amount of time that they worked. And so I think that would be a really great example of a person we would suggest call us up so we can talk to them about it, and then, let them know, or let them know the best way to present it. But that, it may depend how they present it on whether they would be qualified for it or not.
Juliana has a good question because they, this came up during the pandemic. And with the substitute shortage, you may have heard that some of the TOSAs had to just kind of help out. It is not standard practice to have TOSAs go and sub, and we would not plan to have you unless there was like some dire emergency. You're not going around subbing in different places. You're actually going around coaching and supporting. Could it happen that you needed, when you're at a school anyways, do a co-plan, co-teach, say, oh, can you handle this for a second? That happens with TOSAs all the time. But the intent is not to have someone who's like a roving sub or anything like that, because you can't train people when they're not there. So if you're doing co-plan, co-teach, the other person's got to be there. And we have to address our own shortages on our own. But we're hoping that will not continue on, but it certainly is not the intent at all that you would be a substitute doing the job. You're actually the coach helping those who are doing the job.
Yes, thank you for answering that, because it would not be the best use of your time, right, to hire, into this type of a classification and have you be like the on-call sub. So that's definitely not the intent. It is on the job description as a may, but that would be in very dire circumstances. Eliana, would you type into the chat the name and phone number of who people can call in our office if they have more questions? Or a couple names if you want to spread the wealth. Thank you. We're not sure technically how to do this yet, but what our thought is that once we have the recording of this Zoom session, we may embed it, put it back in the link into the posting, so people who couldn't attend today will see it. If for some reason you're, really enjoyed yourselves and want to hear it again, we're hoping to put the recording there. If you don't see it there in a day, then I will work with Linda Elliott, CSEA president, and some other people to try to get the word out. But if you don't see it and you want to refer people to us, please do so and we'll get it to you. And then Eliana, they're asking if they need to attach proof of an AA degree or the units.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was supposed to cover that in my part. So you could either put it on your application, or we will be requesting it during the exam process. So maybe we haven't decided yet if the first or the second exam process step we would be requiring it, but we will be asking for proof at one point or another. If you have it readily available, I'd say go ahead and attach it to your application, then you don't have to worry about it later. But if not, or if you need to start working on getting it, because I know sometimes people misplace it, or you might have to go request your transcripts from your college, feel free to take time to do that now, because we'll probably be asking for it in a couple of weeks. A copy of your diploma is acceptable as well, or a copy of the AA degree, or whatever you have. And yes, if you have anything higher than an associate's degree, we'll accept that as well. Either the transcripts or the license or diploma as well.
Another question I received was, what skills are you most looking for from your applicants? And I know that they are still developing because you'll go through the whole process of, the exams and then the interviews. So that's still being developed, but I would think of what you would want as a good coach, right? So you'd want someone, think of goal 1, 2, and 3. So, goal 1, someone who has good skills in being a paraeducator yourself, that how to provide support and intervention for students, behaviorally, academically, any of that training and support you have. Goal 2, which is more of the soft skills, how you work with others. I know when teachers on special assignment come out of the classroom, probably one of the most challenging things is, how do I provide PD and support to others in a way that they're going to accept it and we're going to work well together? And that's about relationships, that you form with people. And in a way, that's sometimes the hardest part, because when a TOSA comes out, it's like, I'm the expert in math, or I'm the expert in early reading, but now I have to find a way with this person who maybe might not have my level of expertise to make it clear and understandable and get them to want to work with me. And then, of course, someone who is a lifelong learner and enjoys, learning more and, being involved in professional development and providing professional development. So I would say from a big picture, would be goal 1, 2, 3, what we're looking for, but then they will be developing the specific, the questions. And so if you think of being a great paraeducator yourself, being knowledgeable and being able to help others is those most important skills.
Yes, and so I think when we're developing our testing material too, I mean, if you think what, like Gabriela said, a coach, what would be the skills a good coach or presenter would have? And that would be, clear speaking skills, some decent writing skills. So we might be looking at your skills in that area. How do you present and receive information? Are you a good listener? Do you have a nice way about providing feedback to others? So just maybe think about the people that really worked well with you through the years and what skills did they have, or demeanor, approach to things. And that's exactly what we would be looking for. Okay, this has been a great session. Are there any final questions? Written test, we're not sure if there would be like a multiple choice test, but it might be something where you're writing a short narrative. It might be more of a performance exam. So, it's not really finalized yet. We're really at the beginning stages, so I don't want to lock in too much to what we think we might do, because it might change on you. And you do not need to attach performance evaluations. That was a question in here. Just be thinking about too, as Eliana mentioned, if you're going to that final selection interview, you can present to that hiring supervisor any information you would like. You can hand them a letter of reference. You can hand them your last performance evaluation, but you don't need to necessarily attach it to your application. Okay, I think with that, we will end the meeting. I thank you for your time and interest. We hope you give this a lot of good consideration. I think it would be really fun and exciting and rewarding to be at the ground level of helping to develop and build this program. So thank you all for your time. Bye-bye.